Hi, thank you for inviting me, Patty. And I've been in your shoes for those of you that are sitting in those comfortable couches and beautiful chairs, where I've been the recipient of some great tips and knowledgeable speakers. So hopefully I can do the same for you guys tonight. So if we go to slide 2, what I kind of entitled this was Marketing Essentials to Land the Big Fish, because once you sort of land the big fish, the other fish will follow. But our goal for today is I really want to share just some universal best practices that work. And they work not only for large multinational companies in terms of dividing those as big fish, but also for any size company, whether you're privately owned or it's a boutique firm, size firm, or you have partners. But I found that this works for the majority of categories and customers. So for Nikki, with auto repairs, you might see some direct applications, and even Alicia, as you think about the different areas that you're interested in, whether it's on the interior design or publishing, I think it'll apply to even those areas too, for example. And it sounds like there might be some people who are listening to the recording. It might actually help you too. So on the next slide, keeping it simple here on the agenda, there's just 3 things. I'll cover through the next few, maybe 45 minutes or so, sort of 3 steps, these essential steps that I'm really going to go into detail with, and even provide some examples, some real world examples actually, because I find you might get the concept or the theory, but if you actually have examples, that can really help illustrate what I'm talking about here. And I know for purposes of recording, questions may be a little bit interruptive, but I think it is important, if something's not clear, please ask questions, because these steps kind of build upon each other, and I want to make sure that you truly understand what we're talking about here, what the application might be. And then lastly, there's nothing as good as practicing. So we're going to try it amongst ourselves. So we're going to leverage the collective expertise of those of you in the room and some of your fresh perspectives, because I find even when you're not in the same industry or category, but because you are managing your own business and growing and also finding some of the same hurdles, leveraging that wisdom and experience can often help, and then we can actually pressure test some of these examples that we're going to actually try. So let's start with the first step, which is on the next slide, and that's actually step 1. And so the idea here is really what we're going to cover is what are the first steps that you need to do. And part of this really involves, think about it as almost taking inventory of yourself and your capabilities for your business, but also your customers. Things you might have already considered, but there might be some blind spots that you haven't. But the key thing here is we're going to make some choices. And some choices are hard, because when you say yes to something, that means you're going to say no to something else. But what you'll see is it actually gives you focus, and it should increase your batting average, whether it's with your promotions, your proposals, or your sales. So as part of this, many of you probably heard of this before, is put yourself in the customer's shoes. And what I mean by that is, under the who is who truly is your bullseye of your target. This is where you really want to get specific and start focusing. So as I go through just these kind of 4 lines here, I'll go through an example of what I'm talking about. So when I talk about your target, let's pretend you're Coca-Cola and you have all these beverages to sell. Well, when they're thinking about their target, they're going to think about more specific targets than the human population. They're going to really, in this case, go from humans down to adults. And in this case, the target for just this example is going to be active adults and youth. And then the next step is to think about what's your target's need? What's the solution that you're going to provide to either fill that need or address a pain point that nobody else has ever actually addressed? So in this case, when we're thinking about beverages, and I'm talking about active adults and youth, they may be thinking about beverages that are actually where their primary purpose is about filling the need of hydration. So it's not going to be an energy drink, and I'm not talking about a refreshment drink like a soda, or even a meal replacement drink, which is those really high calorie sort of smoothie type drinks. We're talking about hydration here. And then the other thing to consider is the timing. When you think about the seasonality or the purchase cycle of your customer target, what are some patterns that you're starting to see? Because that's going to actually help you think about when to either launch your proposal or your bids or your promotion. So for example, when you think about selling these hydration drinks to these active youth and adult, it's most likely they're going to consume it after, you know, an event, a sporting event or a workout or that kind of thing. And you think about seasonality, it's most likely going to happen during the summertime or when it's the peak time when it's back to school. So that'll give you a sense of why this matters when you think about inventory or production, if you're producing items that you're selling, or again, when you're going to do promotions or perhaps advertising. So you wouldn't want to advertise these hydration drinks during winter, but you know, during summer or back to school might make sense. And then the fourth item here is, again, that purchase path. When I think about hydration drinks, think about everything from the form factor. So most of these drinks need to be sort of portable because they're going to be drunk after a workout or a sporting event or something like that. So they're more likely going to buy things in a single serve kind of package than the liter size. And that's going to help me plan my production and my packaging and businesses. They're more likely to buy these in bulk rather than one bottle at a time. And they're likely to buy this more likely in the grocery store or a discount retail outlet rather than a convenience store or a vending machine. So again, that kind of gives you an idea to hone in who my target is, what do they need, what kind of seasonality or patterns you might see. So that affects the timing of when you're going to be doing one thing or another. Any questions on that step one? You guys might be mute, so I don't hear anything. So I'll keep on going.
I have a question.
We got one question, Brenda.
Okay. What's your question?
Well, I'm wondering how Coca-Cola is just the Coca-Cola. How do they take into consideration, like the active adult buying a hydration beverage? Coca-Cola doesn't really have a track record in that area, and how do they take into consideration the perception people have about Coca-Cola and Coca-Cola's ability to deliver in that particular marketplace?
Yep, that's a good question. You're really getting that territory of branding here, and I think that's really key because you can't be all things to all people if you're going in a very targeted fashion. So Coca-Cola as the corporate brand has a very long and established, and for the most part, positive relationship with equaling soda and refreshment. And so what they do is then they create sub-brands. So it might be the Dasani water that they chose for hydration, and that was actually an acquisition, but they realized that, and most likely it's not just because it's a gut feeling, but they actually do research for this kind of thing. Would a hydration beverage from Coca-Cola that's under the Coca-Cola brand versus another brand work? Would the same look and feel of the packaging, like the shape of the Coke bottle, work with a hydration beverage, or do you need to go with a totally different, packaging shape of water to give them a sense of this is different from soda, this is about hydration? You might not have opaque packaging, but you might have clear packaging so you can actually see the purity and sort of cleanliness of the liquid itself. So to answer your question, it really is oftentimes either another name or a brand. But the caution there, just to make sure if you're a smaller business, is you need to invest, whether you launch a brand or another product line or name, is being willing to invest in promoting the awareness and the meaning of that brand. In Coke's case, they have the funds, and the return on launching a very successful project or product or brand is worth it for them.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
No, you're good to go.
Okay, so let's go to the next slide, which says step 2. And here I'm introducing the concept of a value proposition. So for some of you, maybe you've heard of this before, and if you haven't, that's totally fine. It's really an internal marketing term that's used by the big brands and even medium and small companies. Again, this applies to any size company. But first, let me define what a value proposition is. And again, this is very core. The majority of large companies who are consumer facing, they all do this if they have a brand. So what a value proposition is, it's a brief statement. I'm sure you can just read it for yourself. But the key words I've underlined here is it explains the benefit you're providing for who, that's the target that we talked about on the previous page, and the benefit is that need that you're filling, and how you or your business uniquely does it well, and you do it better than a competitor. So those are the sort of three pillars. It's the benefit that you're solving or providing for your target, which is the who, and how you yourself are uniquely positioned to do it well. And what a value proposition is used for is on the next slide with sort of these honeycomb colored shapes, is it really is meant to fuel or power all your touch points that are under your control. So these aren't customer facing kinds of things, but essentially it fuels what you actually message to your customers. It should inform and infuse all of your marketing materials, any proposals that you do or estimates that you give your customers or even bids. If you do advertising, you know that's part of it. Again, web presence, etc., social media, any of your deliverables. So whether it's the packaging of your product, or if you have a retail or office environment, that should really bring to life what your value proposition is. So again, this is how it's used. The value proposition itself isn't sort of the customer ready language that you often see in marketing materials or advertising. But how important is it? I'll get, today, for example, I'm in my hotel room in Chicago, and I just finished a 2-day offsite with a client of mine in Chicago. It's a $10 billion size in revenue. 35 people took part in this 2-day offsite just to work on developing a value proposition. And think about the cost of that to the company. That's 35 people times 2 days, that's 70 days, business days of productivity that they allocated to develop a value proposition internally. And that's just the start of it. Like, we're not even finalizing the value proposition. But it was a really good offsite that included...
Patty has a question for you, Brenda.
Okay. I'm sorry,
She was
what?
asking, I'll repeat the question so you don't have to
Okay.
read it. She was asking if they could have just hired you to write it for them.
Well, one of the purposes of this is, in fact, that's a good question, is part of a value proposition, because it's going to infuse all these customer touch points that I shared on all these honeycombs, for example, is you want to get buy-in from the people that are going to have to produce or be affected by the value proposition. So in this case, of the 35 people, these were the variety of functions they represented. There was legal, sales, marketing, competitive intelligence was there, the product owners were there, corporate strategy, I'm trying to think who else was there. Research was there. There were 2 consultants, actually myself and another person. And the whole team, this is actually for a specific business unit within the overall company. So in this case, the value proposition was being used to develop for a specific business unit. It's almost like the question that was just asked a couple minutes ago, which is, this isn't a value proposition for Coca-Cola or the holding company. It's a value proposition that we're going to develop for a growing opportunity and business. So, I mean, this is a real thing, and, businesses spend time doing this, and this is how important it is. In fact, I wouldn't recommend it for your size business, but what we're actually going to do is we're going to go into testing the week after Thanksgiving and go to focus groups in Phoenix, actually in Chicago, to test this among customers to sort of see if it resonates or not, and what's the actual language that works and sort of connects and makes it accessible to customers. Okay, so let me go through some actual examples of value propositions. So on the next slide that says Walmart, this is the value proposition that would work for Walmart. And it's easy now because it's been out there, but if you sort of boil it down, if a brand or company is doing their value proposition consistently, you should be able to fill this in for a lot of consistent sort of leading kinds of brands. So in this case, their target aren't just families, they're cost-conscious families. And one could even argue it's cost-conscious moms of families because they tend to be the primary decision maker and the actual buyer of the consumables. And the problem that they're trying to solve is for cost-conscious families who are looking for name brands at a value. So they're getting a little pretty specific here. It's not just who are shopping for their family, buying food. They're looking specifically for name brands at a pretty good value or price. And the solution and benefit that they provide is, in their case, it's guaranteed low prices so that they can keep these cost-conscious families from having to make sacrifices. There's often this trade-off when you feel you don't get the brand name of a particular product that you're looking for. And so what does Walmart uniquely provide? In this case, it's their scale. They have that global scale to command the lowest costs to provide, a really high quality breadth of selection of products so that the savings can be passed on to their customers. So I think that kind of makes sense. Again, it seems like, oh, that's easy because Walmart probably tested this and they had all these agencies or consultants look on it. Well, let me share an example of how I applied this to my own business. In my business, it's just actually myself. I'm the sole proprietor. And so even if it's just for me, I'm able to do this for my clients. So in my case, my company is called the Trio Group. My target is actually multinational consumer companies. So I'm not talking about startups. I'm saying no to entrepreneurs. And I'm saying also no to regional companies. The problem I'm solving I find that in these large companies, they often don't have the time or capabilities to find the kind of solution that I provide, which is proven consumer insights and strategy. So they're always doing, for these types of large companies that I'm targeting, they're usually doing market research and they use it to develop new products or their corporate strategy or their marketing strategy. What I bring sort of uniquely is it's like I'm an insurance policy. I sort of minimize the risk for them because they are making, as Patty said, these sort of multi-million-dollar decisions. And so whether it's you're launching a new product or you're shifting your marketing spend or strategy, what I provide is sort of that insurance policy to minimize and make sure that the decision we're going to take is the right or the best decision to go. And then what's unique about me is my background, as kind of Patty shared, is actually my whole career, except for the last 5 years since I've had my practice, has always been on the corporate side where I've been on the client. So I actually get it. I've been in their shoes in similar large companies. So at Microsoft and at Nestle and T-Mobile, I've had executive positions to individual contributor positions. But what this does for them is what I usually kind of do in my sort of sell-in is I don't share this slide with them or even parrot back what I've written on this slide. But what I often tell them is I work as a virtual extension of their team, and I typically work with the head of corporate strategy or marketing. And oftentimes, because they have so many projects, I help them sort of figure out what are the best ones to sort of place me on. And those are often what I call the pet projects of the CEO or the CMO. So there's just a lot riding on it, and so they just want to make sure that project goes right. So they'll bring me in to make sure that project goes right, or it's gone off track and I bring it back on track. Other times it might be projects where they're spending a lot on a research project. In one case it was $1 million research project that just is done on a continual annual basis, and they weren't getting $1 million worth of information and direction from it. So I was brought in to find out how can we make that particular program more impactful and more efficient. And so I helped redesign, the goals and what we were, the questions we were answering, and brought in a better agency to sort of fulfill that for them. But anyway, so that's an example of my value proposition. And I think what's also key, but it's not on the slide, is who do you compete with? Because that will help you define what's unique about you. So in my case, I'm very clear. I don't tell my potential customers this, but I'm really competing against medium, boutique, or single individual consulting firms who tend to provide really sort of that traditional McKinsey, Bain type consulting where they kind of helicopter in from the outside, try to fix it and helicopter out. What I do is I come in as that virtual extension of their teams, which is a little bit different from consultants and what clients seem to really appreciate. And then I don't have to charge the $1 million, but I'm able to charge a high enough price that is beneficial for me, but also saves costs on the client side. So instead of $1 million, I can charge a fraction of that cost, which, you know, a fraction is still a good portion of $1 million. So any questions on that before we kind of try it ourselves?
Anyone have any questions? I'm not getting any hands up, so.
Okay, that's good. Okay, so the next slide is basically the template here. And what's nice about it is, let's see how far we can get this afternoon or, you know, sort of early this evening. But you can also use this or even, you know, pass it along to other business owners that you feel, not your competitors obviously, but just other folks you think might be able to benefit from this. So it's, so let's try it. So the idea here is if you have either, you know, a piece of paper or it looks like it's just kind of a small group today, so maybe you just want to sort of think it through or jot it down on your phone or if you've got a laptop, but fill it in for yourself. Who is the target that you're going after? And be really focused and specific. So if you're talking about automobile owners, maybe they're automobile owners of certain aged cars, or they're new car owners, or it's, you know, whatever, you know, repairs for a particular type that you're focusing on for customers. What's the problem that you're going to be solving for them? And try to be as specific as you can, because the more specific you are, you'll see that your client will say, oh, I'm the perfect fit for this, so there really isn't, you know, more shopping around that I need to do. I feel like you're actually talking to me. And then think about what is it that you yourself or your company is providing, so the service or the product that's a benefit to your customer, and then what is specifically unique that you're offering. And so some people often get stuck on this part, and so what I found is, you know, some potential areas might be, what's the unique service that you're providing, you know, in terms of like customer service, or is it expertise that you have? Maybe you have expertise in just German automobiles, or you're a local business versus a national business, or maybe it's, you know, in some cases your pricing. You've got competitive pricing versus, you know, maybe your competitors aren't local competitors, but it's versus other sources that your customers can buy the same thing from. So maybe it's from overseas, or they can buy it on the web, but it's your delivery or your warranty or whatever it is that's going to be unique to you. So why don't we try to pair up and spend about, say, 10 minutes, maybe 15, depends on, we'll do a check-in. But first, do this for your own business. And if you're sort of at that career path, think about maybe the one you might be interested in, or if you're like Alicia trying to decide, maybe do it for just one of the areas that you're interested in. Maybe it's your interior design or your fine art appraisal or your publishing arm, but do for one of your businesses. And then after you've sort of drafted that out, share it with the person next to you or someone you don't know and have sort of pressure test it. See if it makes sense to them. So let's take 10 minutes and try that.
All right, I'm going to unmute you and turn the camera on. So anyone that wants to talk to you can just walk up and give you a question.
Sounds good.
It's hard with the wires to get it around. I'm dropping the microphone. Do you want me to be like panning the room with the camera, or at least trying to every once in a while, or are you good talking with the visuals? What's preferred for you?
Oh, well, while they're working, actually, I'd like to see a pan because I like to see how many pairs there are. But other than that, I'm fine with, or maybe when we get to the sharing, I'd love to see, like, if you could pan to the person that's going to share.
Oh, absolutely. So from what I've gathered, you want them to do it for themselves first,
Right?
and then pair up with one other person to share or improve their
Yep,
plans?
share and get feedback.
Okay, yeah, so 5 minutes to do your own, and then after that, another 5 minutes to share, right?
Yep.
Okay. Should have brought an external camera. Would've been ideal. You could plug in a camera with a USB. Would have had to buy one, but if we ever do this again, it definitely be worth it.
So Brenda, I'm just really amazed that you were able to do this after all day long facilitating, because I know how strenuous that can be. So thank you very much for canceling on us.
Welcome.
It's really that's where I think they really teach on their desires. Yeah. There's a lot of layers to this. This target, they're home. Right? This target, there's studies. That's exactly. That's a really good point. Yeah.
Family values, yes. Because it does.
Well, solution is just that. That else. Yeah. Right. So you get the problem. The target customer is easy to one question, why don't we yeah, these guys are problem. Varies. Yeah.
That would go to see. Beginnings, I would say,
Yeah, it doesn't get too far. So, when you look at the target area, it would just be Yes, this group is yeah.
It also has scriptures.
I think what's
Illustrations.
program is where else can somebody who doesn't
So now
so you look at a student who
that
has
is actually the best that would be the best when
well established industry leaders.
so I don't mind some screenwrites.
These are students that don't have access to all of their
But if someone is doing presentations, you know, for film reels, and she's
Okay, let's wrap up in about 4 more minutes.
Yeah, so if you guys haven't started exchanging ideas on
That's a great.
Some of us, I didn't know, I'm not really in the business of helping you figure out what your passion is.
Right.
Or solving the problem you're solving.
Yeah.
It's really, you've found the problem, or you found your passion.
Right, this is what I say about this age group and what it's very similar to the rest of the world. You aspire to you aspire to be, well, what is that?
Well, that's what I call us to successfully. He's interested in Jesus. I'm interested. As part of the benefit because only what's his name? And I actually, do you know why I actually had gone my freedom, and then she didn't want me anymore, that no one else could say that it was personal. Because if they did, then no one else could do. And then, because the new publishing offices, they were on the list of words that she could use for
with with your product, sorry, or vice versa, right? Provide products, but I could also provide guidance through this product and building your business. Or, hey, I can help you come up with this coaching in this direction, and why don't you use these to kind of organize yourself? It's pretty neat. Yeah. I was trying to do the whole
I've won it once for myself, once for my client. My new client, I just finished the concept about me and the big that is
That's somebody.
I did this ad for City Block. It's so cool.
Okay, you guys just about ready to share?
All right, everybody, it's about time.
How do you organize yourself?
Okay.
Trying to get wrangle these cats real quick.
So, I think there's about maybe 4 pairs or so over there.
There is one, two, three, 5 pairs.
Oh, okay. Well, we can, if you guys want, depends on how much time you have, we can just sort of see who wants to go, or if maybe one person from each pair. I'm flexible, so you guys can. Who wants to be the first brave person to go first? And I must say, there are no right or wrong answers, because you know your business yourself. What's going to be helpful, I think, is for the rest of the group to hear, and maybe they might have questions like, well, why are you saying that? Or are you actually targeting the decision maker, or are you just targeting the influencer, for example? So when you think about jewelry companies, you can tell pretty clearly if they're targeting the influencer, which might be the person who's wearing the jewelry, or the buyer itself, when you think about engagement rings, for example. So who'd like to go first?
All right.
Hi, Brenda. I'm Donna Green.
Hi, Donna.
I have started a new company called Santa Barbara Greeting Cards, and I did a fair amount of research before I started this project.
Great.
When I had the idea in mind, I went around to all the shops that I can find in town to see if they sold greeting cards of Santa Barbara in sets.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just individual postcards or
Yep.
greeting cards. And I couldn't find any. And so
Good.
this is something that I took on myself as a new business, and I started with the postcard concept. And I put 12 greeting cards in a set. I just got these tins back.
Mm-hmm.
This is the postcard tin.
Okay.
The backs, they're laminated, and the inserts in here show the images like a calendar.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great.
Because they're going to be, I shrink wrap them, and then this just comes off, and in the back is a picture of the harbor with my logo.
Right.
And
Yes, if you want to change the contents, you could.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So I had all these photos, took pictures of the courthouse, Botanic Gardens, all over the Mission, and all over town, and I'm going to be targeting these stores that I went into, as well as the museums, hotels, places like Santa Barbara Gift Baskets, Plum Goods on State Street that sell locally made things.
Uh-huh. Yep.
The tourist industry, including the cruise ships, visitor center, that kind of thing, because the postcards are like basically a trip to Santa Barbara in a tin. Because
Yeah.
it highlights, they have different photos. A couple of them are overlapping, but it's a great gift idea for local people and ask, just to buy themselves and send the cards of my hometown, as well as people that have never been here that would like to get a glimpse of Santa Barbara. So that's my plan, and I'm hoping it goes well.
Yeah.
So,
So I think I really understand your target and the unmet needs. Sounds like there's no competition right now, other than a person might choose to buy another set of cards or individual cards, right?
I've also offered them individually for sale on my website, so that I can also let people refill, or if they like one particular card a lot, they can get a bunch of those or whatever. So
Yeah.
Your input is valuable to me. So
Okay. Well, here's what I would think. I think you've got a very clear, you thought about it thoroughly. You've got packaging, which adds a perceived value to the overall price of the cards itself. You can reuse the tins.
They also come with a bamboo pen, both sets that are engraved with the name of the company. So it'll be a marketing technique as well. Anyway.
Great. And what are you selling what's the price to the consumer? Not the retailer, but the consumer?
The consumer, this would be $17.99 and this will be $28.99.
And how many? And there's 12 cards in one. What about in the $28 one?
12 postcards and 12 greeting cards.
Okay, so typically a consumer will probably look at it and say, okay, what's the price per card?
Right.
Right? And so you have to think about, and I don't know, I can't do the math right now, it's been a long day, but how does that compare? Maybe it's a little bit more than the competitors who sell Santa Barbara cards.
It's actually less.
Is it less? Okay, so then you've got that good value then, plus you got a reusable tin.
Yeah.
So, and what you can sort of see too is when you're speaking with basically your distributors, see if they feel like, then does that mean that they could charge more? Would they want the margin, or should you be getting the margin? We're sort of moving outside of the value proposition, but I'm thinking about your overall offer right now. So as you think about the benefit that you're selling, is how is it beyond just the packaging itself that you're offering? Is it the value that you're getting all of this plus a reusable container? Just sort of think about, or is it more the fact that there's this, the eco side? It's a reusable container. Maybe they're printed on recycled materials.
Yeah,
is that sort of part of that sort of Santa Barbara essence too? Think about everything about Santa Barbara goes into your value proposition. So it's not just the content of your pictures, but the way you put this all together, and that might represent those sort of Santa Barbara values.
Right. Yeah, it is recycled paper. So.
Yeah.
And these are completely reusable. So.
That's great. Yeah, I think have you started approaching them with your actual? What's been the response so far?
I've actually been shrink wrapping like a mad woman the last couple over the weekend because the tins came in late Friday, so it's brand new.
Okay. So I do want to hear the other folks, but
okay.
I'm going to sort of just actually mention what my third my third step is. So we won't have to. Actually, I'll just hold it. Let's let everyone go first. But my next sort of three step will actually address something that relates to your cards, Donna. But let's go with the next person. Thanks for sharing.
Who's up next?
Hi Brenda, how are you? I'm Anita.
Hi.
So the name of my business is Odulair, Odulair, and we are the way I would describe an elevator pitch, the way I would describe what we do to someone who would not know is I would generally say, imagine anything you would see in a doctor's office or a hospital. We put that in a truck, a trailer, a container, or a boat, and deliver those around the world so that people who have no access to health care now do. So that's just kind of a general elevator pitch. So I'll just read through
Excellent. Yep.
what I put just to save some time.
Yes.
So, for large and governmental organizations responsible for the provision of healthcare in developing countries who have difficulty providing such, Audulaire provides turnkey mobile medical outreach solutions to successfully treat hundreds of thousands of patients annually with no worries, because Audulaire is the world's only mobile clinic manufacturer, owned and operated by medical professionals just like yourself.
A+. And let me tell you why. I don't know. I hope everyone heard her value proposition, because I mean, I could have used your value proposition in the last 2 days, because I think you really understood it, where in your target definition, it wasn't just government, but it was large government, you were saying, and it's specifically where developing countries. And I'm sure people in the room could, as well as myself, who could visualize who you're actually talking to and who you're targeting to. And then when you talked about what you're providing, you used the word turnkey, and I totally get that, and I know government would for sure. But you've also provided that, what I call the seal of approval, with your uniqueness, which you talked about. It's actually owned and I think provided by medical care professionals. So that kind of gives that seal of approval or credibility, instant credibility of what you guys provide. And I also like the fact that you didn't have to put price in there, because price is a slippery slope. And the fact that you've got mobile medical or mobile clinics that you're providing, one thing I might suggest is trying to almost help the client visualize or paint a story of what that might look like. So when you get to the sort of customer-facing part of your messaging, what's the most common scenario or use case that you find? So maybe in XYZ country or multiple countries, you found this is the most common use. Maybe when there's, I don't know, a cholera breakout or whatever it is, this is when it, is it the time? Is it the specialty of this that's being really used in a particular usage or scenario? And that'll help people just sort of get it right away. Does that make sense?
Well, we do, we build clinics in more than 40 different medical specialties, so literally anything in a hospital. And typically the way our products are used successfully is when we sell to, say, for instance, a Ministry of Health. Our largest customer is the Ministry of Health in Ghana, West Africa. Yeah. And they take a set, like an entire set of clinics that are built on 4x4 trucks. They take them out together and literally create a camp, so to speak. So when one of each of these specialties goes out together, it literally creates an on-site hospital in a village where there was nothing there before.
Okay.
So,
I get it.
Yeah. So is that something I should incorporate into this?
Not in the value proposition, but as you're bringing it to life. So I think in the value proposition itself, what I understand more now is it's a complete, I know you said turnkey, but when I think of turnkey, I think you really mean turnkey, meaning it's ready to go. The infrastructure is there, and maybe all you need to hook up is just a power source, or maybe not. But it sounds like it's just basically drop and go. I mean, you're just ready to start, administering whether it's the medical services or the diagnostics, within 5 hours or whatever it is. That's kind of a benefit to them, is there's the immediacy of when they'll be up and running, for example. That's maybe something you could add in there.
Okay, great. And the one question I would have is, and I've been dealing with this question for a while. So you and I know what turnkey means, although I did just kind of mean a bigger turnkey than you thought. But
Yeah.
People outside of the U.S. do not use the word turnkey. And
Right.
I don't have I've really been thinking for months about this. I don't have another word that I think is the perfect word that is understood internationally. Do you by chance know one?
I don't, but what I found, because I've done, I've had global roles where, like for example, selling Xbox, you have to explain it to folks in Asia as well as Europe and South America, is using very simple language, because you're going to do English, I'm assuming you're not going to translate it. It's just, for example, and these aren't the exact words, but it's the idea of how little you have to do and what you don't have to do. So it's like, if it's like, for example, in the terms that they think of, which is, it's probably setup costs or infrastructure. Maybe they don't even have the word, but setup meaning power or, setting it up or anything like that. You can sort of bypass that with saying, from delivery, you can start administering XYZ service within, fill in the time, which means you don't have to set up plumbing or, walls or anything like that. So it's it's the steps out, laying out the steps, because they show then it's like you're not doing 10 steps, it's only 2 steps.
It seems like it's completely self-contained.
Yeah, it is. In our case, turnkey in this example means you buy from us, we bring everything in. All you do is put the doctors and nurses in it, and we do everything else. We do the logistics.
Okay.
We build the equipment. We do the logistics. We do the warranty. We do the maintenance. We take care of everything. We can even do resupply of stock. Literally, they don't have to do anything but write a check.
Right. So
Write a check and give us doctors and nurses license to practice in that country. Which, if they can't do that, we can do that part too.
Yeah. And then I would even just lay it out like that, which is, it's really nice to see what you're bringing, because that is a long list of things, which also justifies your price. And then the only thing they have to do is basically, the medical staff and professionals. And then, they'll see the value in that.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's almost laying it out for them, or sometimes it's just an illustration that's kind of a universal language too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an exciting business.
It's fun. I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Bert? Faisal? Nikki? No, we got one more over here.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm good.
My name is Claudia, and my family owns a nail salon.
Uh-huh.
And I was really excited about coming today because we're building the systems to franchise the nail salon.
Yeah.
So my target audience for the company would be women and men living in Santa Barbara seeking expert professional nail care services in a professional environment. The problem would be these individuals looking for a professional and health conscious environment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the solution is Aqua guarantees their nail services and product ingredient standards. And the uniqueness is Aqua is the only locally owned business that offers to satisfy your beauty needs and accommodate your busy schedule.
Okay.
Oh, and a
Wait,
beautiful environment. I forgot that.
What was the last part?
Well, it was like accommodate your busy schedule in a beautiful environment.
Okay.
Actually say your uniqueness.
What
Your
is the?
uniqueness is 9 years out of 10.
Oh, okay.
You have won best of both contests.
My customer in the background is telling me that my uniqueness is that for 9 years out of 10, we've won best of in the Santa Barbara Independent and Readers Poll, the News Press Readers Poll.
Both of them.
Ah, that
That is
is very key. That's a very coveted award to merchandise the heck out of because that's your seal of approval right there, besides customer reviews, etc. So let me ask you a couple things. When you mean guarantee, what do you mean by guarantee?
So in our industry, typically what will happen is if your nail polish chips or if you have any kind of challenges with your nail service, you'll come back to the business, and then they'll charge you for the time that they're fixing the service. Where we use professional products, and our service providers are skilled certified, so we guarantee that our polish is going to last, or our service is going to meet your expectations.
Okay.
Or we redo it for free.
Mm-hmm. And when you say skill certified, is that something that's more unique? Like a lot of competitors don't have certain
I would say
hours of training or anything?
I would say that we're probably the only salon that skill certifies our service providers.
Okay, so that's really unique. I would actually include that in your value proposition, and I think for people who are looking for that professional, very clean environment, and so it's not only the process of the application, but the results of the long lasting of that. That to me is I think definitely you should also include that in your that very last part, which is the uniqueness of it.
So
Because even if you don't win the award, which you probably will, but if you don't, that's still something that's an evergreen differentiator for your services.
So
What about?
sorry, go ahead.
So I would just write this down. You can look up this online later. Julep, Julep. Have you heard of that? It's
Yes.
the nail salon in Seattle.
Oh, I
also
haven't heard of
women
that.
owned. So let me just contrast how she positioned her business to yours. It's kind of similar, but you can sort of see how she's done it. In this case, female-owned person. She actually used to work at Starbucks, decided to leave the corporate world, and just started her own business. And in her case, her target were women, so not women and men, but in this case, women, also local in the Seattle area. But she felt their need was you go to these other local nail salons or parlors, but you may not be certified, but it's really kind of like the cleanliness and sanitation of the tools that instruments that they use, the tools, those awful fumes. Sometimes if you're a working mom or stay-at-home mom, you don't want to bring your kids in there, even if they could wait for that part. And so she used only I think you call it non-carcinogenic, or it's basically the all-natural kinds of polish that was also just as good as the fuming ones, but it basically meant that for the environment, but also for the workers there, it was a much healthier one. She sterilized all of the instruments, and there was that guarantee there. So that was sort of unique in terms of basically cleanliness and sanitation. She also included, just to kind of build that out a little further, is like, Mommy Mondays, where she would have a person that in the sort of the corner area would have someone who kind of watch kids during certain hours of the week. But I think her main positioning or proposition was a very clean professional environment. So when you think about your areas, your certification, and especially those awards and being local is really key. The local one, I just would caution that most of your probably competitors are also local because they're just physically there. But locally owned, I think, is really key for the target that you're going after. So I'd still keep that in there.
Okay, and one thing that I failed to mention is that we started our own skincare line because I would say about a couple of years ago we had a lot of clients who had cancer, and so one of them challenged me to only use products that were healthy for our customers. So in 2015 we implemented a product ingredient standard where we won't use anything that has petrochemicals, parabens, in our skincare products that we used in our services, or nail polishes. I mean, nail polishes, we did that from the very beginning. So I think it's similar to Jula. We've just
Yes.
basically taken it one step further in the professionalism of our.
So that could be key, assuming if you're going to be able to commit to that for any future services or products you develop. If that's going to be a hallmark, then that could be a differentiator. But you just have to be careful, because once you start messaging it, that means you're setting the lane you're going to swim in. So if you offer other products over time, maybe it's I don't know, remover or make other kinds of makeup. Is that the quality standard that you want to have for all of them? So you just have to think that through.
Okay. Yeah, thank
That's
you.
great.
Thank you so much. Yes.
I think you look at monthly subscription boxes where you can get nail polishes, every different colors, things like that. I didn't know you were making your own products, but
We'll launch in January.
if you're those
Yeah.
monthly subscription boxes are really
Oh, thank you so much.
general.
So is there a time for one more person, or we can
No worries.
go on to this third step?
No, what time is it?
Well, you want to go, Nikki, at 5? Anybody want to go?
You can do mine.
Yeah, why don't you do this? You want to go after Nikki, great, if not, what do you want?
Hi, Brenda. Thanks for doing this.
Sure.
Okay, so Burke, then Nikki.
Okay. My name's Burke. My company, well, I'll just tell you what my target market is an entrepreneur, an inventor, anybody who's got an idea that they want to build a business around. So they've found a problem, they've got a solution for it, and they want to build a business on it. And it could be really any age. And so the problem is they don't know what to do. They don't know where to start. They don't know how to, they need money for their business. And then when they get it going, they need to stay in business without doing something, for lack of a better term, stupid, and putting themselves out of business.
Right.
And so my solution benefit is a suite of business software apps and templates. For my main product is called Biz Plan Builder. It's for writing a business plan. So if you need to get funding, you've got the tool to write a business plan, put together the pitch deck, the financial model, everything you need to go to an investor, whether it's your mom and dad or an angel investor down the street or a professional venture capitalist or anybody who could finance you. You've got the plan and everything you need to pitch it for financing. And I've also got a whole suite of tools that grew out of that for like writing a marketing plan, a PR plan, and press release templates, and an employee policy manual and job descriptions. We've got all that stuff. So, and they're all integrated into a dashboard now. And so, the uniqueness is the fact that we have all these tools integrated into a dashboard. And the other part of it is that they're 80%, I would say, consciously pre-scripted. So they're actually intended to use the content that's in them. For example, my competitor, right now, Wells Fargo is offering a free business plan template. But if you look into it, it says describe your management team here, and you get a blank screen. I actually have everything you would say, except you just fill in the names. So it's really, I was going to use the word turnkey. It's a turnkey, business development software. Just add names and data, and you've got a plan. And so really the benefit is that it teaches people how to do it, and it gives you the tool. You can read everywhere on the internet about, oh, you need a business plan, you should do all this stuff, but we actually have it done for you because it's really easier to edit than it is to write from scratch. That's the deal there. And so that's kind of, I'm combined the benefit with the uniqueness of it. So there's the dashboard, and now I'm finding that people want me to come with it. So although all these years I've been trying to avoid coming with it. It's like, I'm getting out of consulting. Just take the software and you go. But now they want me to provide some kind of webinar, some ongoing consulting with it. So that's the part I'm working out now, is how to figure to build that and make that work.
Yeah, and about how many? I don't know how long you've been. This product or suite of products been around? Has it been around? Or are you just launching it, or?
It's been around 27 years, and I've got 2 million.
Excellent.
And I've got 2 million customers. And so when you talk to your folks at Microsoft, tell them we're using .NET.
That's great. 2 million customers. That's excellent. Around the world or in the U.S.?
Mostly U.S., but around the world, yeah.
That's incredible. Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
really, really something. So when these people are building a business, just going back to your target, just to get a little bit crisper here, would this be like a certain size of business? Could it be any categories? I mean, are there sort of certain categories or types of business this software is better suited for?
I would say, the range of from startup to about 50 employees. You get more than 50 employees, pretty soon they have their own consultants to do the HR stuff. This is where you've got, you need these things done like a big company, but you just don't have the people or the wherewithal to do it. So I'm saying start up to 50 people, really pretty much every industry. So every industries can benefit from it. What I don't have is really specific ones for every industry. So I've got, what I can do is I'm starting to spin collections of them. For example, I could say the business plan, the marketing plan, the employee manual, and a few others, and say, hey, you're running a nonprofit. This is how we have all these great tools for a nonprofit, and talk about each product as if it was designed for a nonprofit. The actual product's the same. So
okay, great. And for nonprofits, is there then oftentimes whether it's regulations or some of the guidelines in terms of things they have to consider for a nonprofit, which is different from a for-profit company? Is that already included in there?
I don't get into that much, really. It's a lot of things about a nonprofit. They've got to make a profit. They've got to run a business, and so a lot of them, I don't know. The stuff I have is for running the business aspect of it. It doesn't get into the nonprofit regulation stuff.
So besides Wells Fargo, who would be another competitor?
Well, there's a lot of consultants out there. I've tried not to go after consultants and say, hey, you don't need no stinking consultant. You can save thousands of dollars. And I'm finding that, and I was thinking that the consultants would be really a front line of people who would want to use my tools, especially the dashboard. Because the idea I was thinking is that they put the dashboard between themselves and the client, and now the client and the consultant can collaborate together on these projects. But I'm finding that it seems like the consultants they have their own tools. They want to do it their way. They don't need my stinking product. So
it's fewer billable hours for them. Yeah.
Well, I was trying to show that they could actually do more. They could expand their consulting practice by having, if you do business plans, you could add marketing plans. You could add other things to what you're doing. I don't know. I'm working on that, but I don't know.
Yeah. So in some ways, one of the things that makes you unique is you're proven in the sense of you have 2 million customers, which for a private business would be very hard to achieve for most folks. And the fact that you've been around for over 2 decades also is another track record or sign of what I call credibility for something like this. Because when you start planning a new business, they're very, very cost conscious of how much they're going to invest in it. And this is sort of that foundational step that they take to minimize business failure or maximize their business success rate. And so those are the benefits that I see coming out of your suite of applications here.
Is there any possibility that 25 years could be used against me? For a lot of people, I want the new thing, the new upstart. Seems to be I don't know, just.
Yeah,
I
it
agree
could
with
be.
you, but
I mean, I don't know the types of business that they're new, obviously. But, part of the things that you might be able to do, and this is outside of the value proposition, but this is like pressure testing it against your own customers, is I'm sure you have their customer contact information. If you can follow up to see, and I'm sure they'd probably love to give you feedback, customers who, based on their tenure, those who've used and purchased your software in the last, say, 5 years versus those who bought it like even 10 years ago, and maybe they're like, the contact information isn't as relevant. So maybe, you can always adjust those who bought it in the last 2 years versus those who bought it in the last 5 to 10 years, just to get a sense of if they were buying it today, would that make a
interesting, yeah.
A different, or would it be a positive or a negative to them? Because they were the ones who actually took the purchase decision to try it.
Right.
And sometimes you can kind of get from there, which is what I'm sort of moving ahead to my next, it's a segue into my next step, which is if you could get some testimonials from them, that's really.
I've got a lot of testimonials. I mean, and they're peppered throughout my website.
Oh, okay, okay, great, excellent. So you're already a step ahead of that then. But, you can leverage your customers. They've probably been, the successful ones too. So I'm sure they probably would love to just give back to you. And then just to kind of, my initial thoughts on your question about minimizing your involvement in it as a consultant, I think, that's a wise thing to do. But at the same time, for those who want more of that hand-holding in person,
Yeah.
then you just charge a lot more for it. So
That's the idea. You're
yeah.
right.
So you can charge, $300, $500 an hour or whatever it is. Because if they really want it, then they should be willing to pay for it.
Okay.
So great.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. What's the name of your software? I'll look it up.
Look up Jian, JIAN.com.
Oh, right. I remember we're at the round table because it's has a Chinese sounding name, and just the URL could be valuable, right?
I have a number of people who call me up and they want to buy it, and it's actually listed with a domain broker right now because that's another branding question for another time. But I'm looking at selling that because a lot of people want it, and it's just everybody keeps asking me, how do you spell it? What does it mean? And it's not an American thing, but people want to buy Gion.com. And if I can get a certain amount of money for it, I'll rebrand. So most people
think about that though too, because you built 25 years and 2 million units of sales.
Most
and
people
if they were going to refer you,
they think of me as biz plan builder.
Okay. So then that's fine. Okay, because just branding, you've got to be careful. But it sounds like you built the brand Biz Builder instead. So
pretty much.
That's
yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you for sharing,
Thank you.
you guys. And I've just got 2 more slides, and so we can wrap up, open it up for Q&A. So if we go back to the PowerPoint deck, this would be step 3. And that is slide number, let me put my glasses on, 10. And I think we've already kind of covered some of this, which is once you have your value proposition, and as you're rolling this out from actual sort of bringing this to life with your messaging, these are some shortcuts to basically build momentum. So once you've landed a big fish, what I found that often works is sort of prioritizing or identifying your endorsements that will sway future fish. So in my case, for my consulting firm, having companies or brands that are instantly recognizable really is a signal, that seal of approval that I mentioned earlier, for prospective clients. And for them, it minimizes their decision-making risk. So they said, oh, well, if Starbucks hired her, should be okay. Or if REI hired her, then it should be fine. So I found that initially when I was starting out 5 years ago, I intentionally went after recognizable brands, and they're hard to get, but once you get one, then it's sort of the momentum rolls from that. And then it allows me to continue to stay with the target that I'm trying to cultivate over time. And depending on your services, if you've got, a B2C business, it's perhaps the number of your customers, like on the Biz Builder suite of applications. Or I love Nikki's promotional idea that they have with the Family Service Day. I mean, that's going to generate a lot of word of mouth and referrals, and possibly some PR in the local areas or just in your own email communications. And then, of course, I'm sure Nikki probably uses this a lot, and some of you too, is just the reviews. So having those reviews or testimonials from existing customers can really make a big difference. Or Alicia, while you're doing your books and everything like that, if nothing says, like on a book review that's often published on the back of the cover, what reviewers say about it. So I think this may seem obvious, but people often sort of don't go out to harvest it. It's more like, oh, I've got these 9 out of 10 year awards of being the best local salon. But how do you cultivate even more awards or more reviews and that kind of thing? So I find that this is an intentional step, not just kind of a nice accidental step to take. And then the last slide here is what I call sort of this bonus essential best practice that I found. And this works even if you're working on a proposal, or if you've got an invoice or a cost estimate for a customer, or it's your leave behind as you're selling your cards off at the museums or the card stores. Is having a one-page executive summary is the best. And some of you may already be doing this, but for those of you who aren't, what I found is, again, putting yourself into the customer's shoes, it saves him or her time from rereading your proposal or going through all of your marketing materials. It's like, everything I need is here. It's easy for me to reference if I'm getting competing bids, and so they can also do that. And if they're in a company where you're talking to a person in procurement, but they have to get the buy-off from the owner or the person who owns the budget, it's a nice one-sheet thing that they can just show and make that conversation and hopefully that decision much quicker. And so in my case, this is just an example here of where I include, what am I going to deliver, what's the timeline, what's the cost, what are the actual steps to get there, all in one page. And these are harder to write, but you'll find that it pays off. And after you've done this one or two times, you almost have a template, and it just makes it easier. Or in case of an estimate or anything like that, it's just consistent with the value proposition and that overall experience that you're trying to provide. So that wraps up the 3 steps and kind of a bonus tip that I wanted to share with you guys tonight. We could open it up for some Q&A if we have maybe about another 5 or 10 minutes.
Brenda, I wanted to mention, so we think alike, and I was talking to Emily. She was my partner, and I told her that my children's book has been endorsed by Ray Bradbury, Stanley of Marvel Comics, and Thomas Steinbeck. It's not your normal children's book. And the reason why I went after reviewers like that was because they're gods to me and for most of the world. And I did not want a New York publishing house. The reason I opened my own publishing company was because they give you a list of words that children of any age are supposed to understand. And they really dumb down kids. And I was test marketing my book by reading to children at the zoo. And a little boy that wasn't even 4 years old said, "Is the turtle wearing camouflage?" And he came up that word all on his own. And I really believe that we need to saturate children. And it is more of a sing-song quality to the book. It completely rhymes. They're complicated rhymes. But I just wanted to prevent any other type of mundane reviewer reviewing my book and saying, "Oh, too complicated." And so I did that on purpose, like you would have done. I went to Stanley of Marvel Comics and said, "Would you endorse this?" So if anyone says anything bad against it, they look like a fool. So
yes.
I completely agree with you on every respect. And as well as going after the big fish, my script now is with Creative Artists Agency. So when I speak about it, it's that instant name recognition and branding. And I felt that because Drew Barrymore is a big fan of the children's book, I wanted her to be the character of Miss White Witch in the book. She's with Creative Artists Agency, and I thought, keep it in-house. And they're supposed to be giving her agent, her entertainment agent, a good review for this. So I'm definitely thinking like you.
Great. Good OCAA. Yep, excellent. That's great.
Okay.
Any questions for Brenda here? All around.
What do you guys think? What do you think? Brenda, did you love being able to ask her and present and get the input? That was great. Really, so we want to like to give you a big hand, Brenda.
I feel like I'm getting dizzy with the Blair Witch Project.